The key for a successful franchise system is selling franchises to qualified franchisee candidates. Another key is having a great relationship with franchise brokers, earning their trust, building a relationship, and working with them to sell franchises. So, what do franchise brokers look for when they evaluate an FDD, when they evaluate an Item 19, and what are their franchisee candidates evaluating? Lisa, thank you for joining us again today. And I'm sure everyone knows you, but Lisa is one of the leading authorities in franchise sales. She's one of the leading franchise brokers. And we're fortunate to spend some more time with Lisa today.
Thanks, Charles. Good to see you again.
Yeah, so we were having a great conversation before we started recording. And Lisa, so our firm represents so many emerging franchisors, and we want to help them succeed. And we want to see startup franchisors succeed. And, in our community forum the other day, a new franchisor had posted, hey, how do I get franchise brokers interested? And so today I thought would be great is to get insights from you as to what good franchise brokers are evaluating when they look at an FDD, when they look at Item 19 financial performance representations, and really what your experience is in what candidates are evaluating.
Well, thank you. That's a good topic, right? So I like that one.
Well, and it's a big one. So
3 years ago said, Charles, everyone needs an Item 19. Who said that?
yeah, no, I and at least the time flies. Item 19 is the section in the FDD where franchisors disclose their financial performance representations. If you're a franchisor, you can't offer information about how much you earn, your franchisees earn, or a candidate can earn unless it's disclosed in Item 19. So Lisa, take it away. What are the fundamentals when you guys are looking at Item 19?
You should have one. And don't let anyone tell you as a I'm talking to franchisors right now. Sometimes we'll hear from a franchisor, no, we don't have one because we're too small and we only have a corporate location. Bull. You should still have an Item 19. We need something to go after. And even if it's even if it's a fabulous P&L of that corporate location, the franchise candidates can use that to set up theirs. It doesn't have to be, they're not going to use exact numbers, but they need those line items. They need those expense items, those income items. Where are we going to make money from? So they can come up with their own conclusions. And so for me, brand new brand or not a ton of franchise candidates and no Item 19, it's like, okay, you sit on the bench until you have one, because there's a million other franchisors like here, probably like you, probably in the same category, that are going to give us that information. So why in the world would I lead that uphill battle on your behalf?
Yeah, there's so many insights you gave there, Lisa. So one frustration, I had a phone call with someone to franchise their business. They worked with a franchise developer. I won't say who it is, but very unethical in what they did. And she was so passionate about her product, sweet person, great entrepreneur. Even explained to me she had taken out an SBA loan to franchise her business. I asked why she didn't have an Item 19. And then when I asked about the data, my explanation was, it was like, hey, I wouldn't go down the franchising path. Even though you've done it already, your numbers aren't good enough for the industry, but maybe in a couple of years. And she explained, well, the developer really didn't explain anything. And the lawyer said that if her numbers are too good, it's going to give the wrong impression. And if they're not good enough, then you don't want to disclose them. I'm like, that's bad.
That is really bad, right? So, yeah, we need to be transparent. And if your numbers aren't good enough, go get them good enough and then come back.
Lisa, the couple of things you shared. Well, number one, you brought up the distinction between company-owned outlets and franchise outlets. And Lisa's point there is, if you're a brand new franchisor, of course you can have an Item 19, but you're going to base it on your current business, right? We call that a company-owned outlet. And then over time, as you add franchisees, you're going to disclose the franchisee data. So Lisa's first point is you have to have one. Her second point, the one she just made, was transparency. And if your numbers aren't good enough, doesn't mean franchising isn't in your future, but go make them good enough and don't franchise just yet. The the real insight that I think even I sometimes overlook, or you lose sight. I love how you explained why you want an item 19. And I think you used terms like, you said franchisee candidates, they need to evaluate the line items. And then you use the terms, they need to come up with their own conclusions. So
Right.
Lisa, share with franchisors some insights when you're saying, well, how do franchisees look at that? When you say they to come up with their own conclusions, what is that internal process like?
Well, so we have a good idea on the expenses from 5, 6, and 7, right? So we can kind of put that together. However, when you look at an item 19 and you get some idea of income statement, it really does help them to put together their whole pro forma. And there are several franchisors right now that are sending those out blank as a unit economics blank Excel spreadsheet, and then you have to put the numbers in. While if the business has 3 or 4 income streams, it's great for you to list out those income streams. Hey, we make 50% of our revenue from Christmas lights 2 months a year. That's a big deal. That might be overlooked in somebody's, whole, we paint houses, we do gutters, we do power washing. Oh, by the way, we do Christmas lights. It might feel like, oh, by the way, it's 10% or maybe 5% of our revenue. No, no, no. When they start getting into validation and that becomes 40% of revenue, that's a big deal. And so it helps someone to not overlook spaces that they're going to be able to make money. And it's okay if it's not full. I mean, I know you have some fabulous brands that give us 19-page item 19s with a full P&L, and I love them, and I have done a couple deals with them. But if you can't do that, give us something to go on. So they do need to come up with their own conclusions, and they can do that in validation, but they need to have some sort of structure in order to put that together.
So let's deal with top line, because I love the point you're raising. And so we have the item 19. We know at a baseline level, we're starting off with gross sales.
Yep.
And the point Lisa's making, and the point you're making that I love, and it is something we focus on, is Lisa's point is, before you even get past gross sales, evaluate if there's a story there.
Right.
Can we break up your revenue streams? For example, is a part of your revenue recurring revenue? And can you identify the recurring? Lisa's point is, are there different service categories? Should you be identifying different service categories? I think that's a very overlooked advantage that franchisors drop the ball on, or their attorneys. And I guess your point there, Lisa, is you're filling in pieces to the puzzle. You're telling that story, and you're not just lumping together the gross sales.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing that we're just hounding right now that I have seen kind of changed in my path of being a broker is that item 19 is not how much money are you going to make. Like, stop saying that. Never say it again. Never let it come out of your mouth. Item 19 is a rear view mirror. It's not a crystal ball. It's how much did everybody else make? And so use that rear view mirror. There's things that you're going to adapt in your business, and hopefully you're going to be better. When you get into validation, if you're not talking and running with the top 25% of people that are in that business, if you think that you have any chance of being in the bottom, there's probably a better business out there for you. Let's go find it together. So you always, when you're looking at these, there's lots of options, right? We can make you a front runner in a business. Just let's get to know each other and talk about it and then look at those businesses. But that item 19 is so important because they're going to need to have some idea of how they want to structure their business. And it makes the validation questions so much better. Not how are you doing? How much money are you making? Then it becomes very much like, okay, I see a percentage of the revenue stream coming from, we'll go to Christmas lights again. How does that look for you? And then that becomes a very kind of tangible conversation that they can now start to put together their business model. It's just about being able to frame it out and put your business plan together so you can move forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a couple of quotes in all our videos, Lisa, where I'm like, she nails it, and that's all I need. But the it's not how much money you will make, and then your point, it's a rear view mirror, not a crystal ball. That's amazing, and those are great insights for franchisors. But what I'd love everyone watching this, every franchisor to take out of this conversation, Lisa's point is your item 19 needs to fit in with a bigger story about the brand, the business model. And what Lisa's honing in on is that economic story, not the how much money can I make, but
Right.
what does it look and feel like? What are the revenue levers? What are the expense categories? And as a tool for building my business and building my mindset. So it's like a business planning tool. And I think there's still, and I think item 19s have advanced, and I think the perspective you're
Yes.
sharing, they could advance even more. So
Well,
then, Lisa,
we talked about this, right, Charles? Where I'm like, don't tell me gross revenue. I don't care about gross revenue. It
well,
doesn't, like, I care about it as long as you give me something to go on. But if a restaurant gives me gross revenue and doesn't give me cost of goods, I know nothing about that business. Oh,
right.
yay, that restaurant made $4 million and their cost of goods was $3.8 million. Like, I don't know what it's going to read like, but these people that are looking at these franchises, many of them don't have industry experience. So assumptions for them that the franchisors, this is second nature. They've been doing this business for 10 years. Now they decided to franchise. Well, you know that labor is going to be blah, 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 whatever that percentage is. No, they actually don't. This is a new industry for them. That's why they're choosing the franchise world, is because they have someone that's going to help them and hold their hand. So show that from the very beginning. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you get this going. I'm going to be with you. And then we're going to work on scaling your business and making you an empire or whatever that is. But from the beginning, you are showing what kind of franchisor you're going to be. Are you going to be transparent? Are you going to be supportive? Are you going to help me with the details? Or are you going to give me a training manual, wish me luck, pat me on the butt, and I'll call you in a month when my royalties are due?
Yeah, this is, as you're sharing this advice, I'm thinking so many things in terms of that item 19, that item 19 story, the information on your franchise sales website, the conversation. Lisa, so top line gross sales advice. Hey, if it's just gross sales, it's not enough. Lisa's point, which I agree with 100%. Don't overlook the story in gross sales. Do we have different categories of revenue? One thing we always default to when we're modeling out item 19s, say service-based businesses or whatnot. First, can we break gross sales down by category? And then if we can't break it down by category, can we give service data, like number of service visits,
Right.
average
Yes.
sales per service
Average
transaction?
ticket. Yes. 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 Yeah.
Because, and then that gets to your point, Lisa, that helps tell that story. Because now I don't just know gross sales, I know kind of, I will generate X dollars in gross sales per visit, right? So
Yep.
that,
I had a call yesterday and they did outdoor, like the big outdoor landscape. So not grass, but the, pools and decks and big outdoor kitchens and that type of thing. Average ticket, and they have this in their item 19, was $8,500. And then they actually based it down based on areas of the country. So some average tickets were up to $12,000. And I thought, thank you, because that's how someone is going to put this together. If I'm looking, if I'm seasonal and the average ticket is this, I can start to lay out my revenue, lay out where my staff is going to be, how many hours are they going to need. They're taking those bits of information to form what it looks like to be a business owner, and that's our job.
well, and then Lisa, these bits of info, right? So we have top line, we discussed revenue.
Yep.
Now we get to the next tier, and I know the first expense structure you mentioned was cost of goods sold.
Yep.
So
Yep.
what are you seeing in FDDs, and what's your advice there? Other,
I
in
know
addition to you need it.
you need it. I know it's hard because I mean that's a changing number, and it's I mean especially right now we have supply chain issues and all that. But you have to. I think my biggest suggestion is just give us the big rocks to fill in our business plans, right? We know that there's going to be pebbles, we know the sand's going to fill it in, there's going to be expenses we don't know about, but everyone's expecting that. Anyone that's ever built a house knows there's going to be unexpected stuff, but give us what we really need to watch for and look out for. And if the biggest expense is whatever it is, just tell us, because it's working for other business owners. They're still making money. You hopefully aren't a franchise if they're not, but just give it to us straight so we can lay it out. Don't make us figure it out after we've signed the franchise agreement a year and a half later and then we're screaming.
Yeah, this makes what I love about this advice is that it really needs to integrate into your sales process and your methodology. And I, again, the phrases you're using about just giving those big rocks and then you guys will fill in the pebbles and sand.
Yeah.
That's a great viewpoint for franchisors. And Lisa, with cost of goods sold, one thing we do because there's so much variability in labor,
Right.
I usually segregate them.
Yeah.
And sometimes I can't disclose labor just because it's too broad.
Yeah.
I will, in our definitions, carve out labor out of cost of goods sold and give that data point.
Well, it depends on the industry, right? Every
Right.
industry is different. If you have a super simple business model, that's going to be different than, a full-blown, full-service restaurant model. But
Right. And if it's owner operated, right? So we have franchise founders, they're running their business. Say it's an amazing food truck. Well, their labor is them. And so that's important to really carve that out so a candidate understands what they're going to earn.
when you see that in item 19s now, where you say, okay, this is a corporate location, but here we're going to adjust for royalty, adjust for labor. Evidently, you can do that because I've seen it in several item 19s now. And I had always heard all along, no, you can't make assumptions. Well, you're not making I mean, you really are saying, here it is adjusted for a royalty, adjusted for a manager in place, whatever that is.
Well,
You
and
can figure it out.
what I find when we're working with item 19s, and we do a lot with existing brands shifting over and we reboot. What amazes me time and again, item 19 takes time, and not just time by me and my team doing it. It's that process going back and forth, and where our clients push and challenge in a good way of, hey, I want to provide the data this way too. And can I show the data by ownership groups? And can I show the data by single territory, multi-territory? And I think that's important, right? And to your point about adjustments, if the data is there and it's real and you're spending the time and you're really defining the item 19, there's many things you can do in it.
Right. And now's the perfect time. This is the perfect time for this conversation. So if it's not great this year, figure out your QuickBooks, figure out your line items and your graphs, however you want to show it next year. That's how you need to teach your franchisees to keep track of this, and how you need to keep track of this. Right now is the perfect time. You can still change. Next December, you can't come to Charles and be like, oh, we want to show this, this, and this. We're guessing. We're guessing that this was where, if it's not laid out somewhere and you're guessing, then you're going to get everybody in trouble.
Yeah, Lisa, I just need you to run our office here. I love that you say that, because we have a big target. Q3 is when we start working on next year's item 19s. So the point is, we're through renewal season. Right. Now's the time to what can it look like in 2023? What's the data we'll need to collect, right? Because you can start working on it now and start.
If it's decent right now, great. If there's any changes or details that would make it better right now, start fixing it, right? Start adding those line items, figuring out what percentage is coming from residential versus B2B, right? So we have a lot of businesses out there that are doing both. Well, that's huge. What percentage is coming from national accounts versus local business accounts versus residential. If you're not keeping track of that and it's all getting bulked together, your accountant is going to pull his hair out because you're going to be asking for that data. And if you can figure it out right now and just keep it nice and clean and launch that FDD when you're supposed to instead of in November because you're behind, it's huge.
It is huge. I mean, by December, every franchisor should have a fully modeled out item 19. And the next step, the only steps left are to drop in the actual data that's been collected and then review it, right? Too many times it becomes an afterthought in January and
Yeah.
everyone's just throwing things together, and then attorneys are looking just to plug holes and tell franchisors you can't do it. And it's really that you could do it, but it required planning.
Got to plan
And
for it,
I
yeah.
love,
Bring your
Lisa, I love,
franchise onto the team. The franchisees don't want to think that they're just doing this new chart of accounts in order for the franchisor to make money. No. We're doing this to help you make more money. We're going to help you make better business decisions. If 80% of your income is coming from 2 big corporate accounts, we need to probably adjust your business plan a little bit. And now we're going to be able to figure that out and business coach you through this for next year from learning this information. So it's just not going forward, item 19. It's also supporting your franchisees going backwards.
yeah, you just connected all the dots right there, Lisa, right? Which is, hey, it's great to do this or to sell, but there's a bigger picture here, which is to grow an organization. And
Right.
what's the point of the data? It's the franchisees. That's a great connection there. And that I think it's a great way to phrase the process. Hey, Q2 ended. We're gearing up. We're coaching. We're planning. Here's some
Yes.
data sets we want to collect. Sorry, we have to ask you to do this. Go back to January 1, 2021, 2022. Let's start seeing if we could pull this data and build a compelling item 19 that in 2023 is going to, when Lisa Welko looks at it and our candidates look at it, it's going to tell a compelling story, going to help fill in those gaps.
And that's what you're telling your Fran Dev team, but what you're telling your existing franchisees is that, okay, we're going to start business coaching you now. You've been in business, you've got this, you probably have a year under your belt. They could give two about your item 19, right? What they care about is the business that they're running. And so become the business coach and help them figure out, if you're watching these line items and you're watching these KPIs, we're all going to rise together. And it is going to create some very business-minded, focused conversations. Franchisee advisory boards can get really emotional and very feelings and we need better advertising and better marketing. Okay, let's figure out why. Like, let's raise some of the businesses and some of the business owners, elevate them into that CEO position, which is what you're telling them in the franchise development that you're going to be trying to do. So now put your money where your mouth is.
So Lisa, if we're evaluating the item 19, gross sales, we focused on cost of goods sold. You made great points about really differentiating revenues and revenue sources. What other expense structures or innovative items are you seeing in item 19?
Well, I mean, labor is helpful. Manager versus techs versus hourly. I mean, we're seeing some of that too, right? How much, especially, I mean, we're seeing a lot more semi-absentee requests. And so it's really nice when people look at an item 19 to figure out, how much am I paying my manager? How much am I paying an operations director, the tech? And I mean, it's not going to be down to the hourly, but even a percentage, right? They can kind of figure that out, that this percentage is going to be to pay a manager, and then they can determine, is this going to work financially for us? And I mean, we all know there's ancillaries, right? So if you have a brick and mortar location, you need to show rent. If you're in a service-based business and you have an industrial space, well, that's going to look a little bit better. But some of, go through your P&Ls, go through your balance sheets, and figure out where those big rocks are. Give us at least percentages.
And then Lisa, in the process itself, because I think we gave a great framework for franchisors to be reevaluating or checking in on their FDD, right? So if you're not telling that story that allows franchisees to, put together their own pro forma. And I think that's a great way of looking at it. Can the franchisee take your data sets, your line items? Is that going to share information that allows them to create their own pro forma? I think that's a good baseline. And then the other point is a deeper dive in the data, not just gross sales, but gross sales breakdowns, different categories of revenue streams, types of customers, cost of goods sold. So we have those drill downs.
And I know it's a lot and they're not going to be able to do it all in their first year, but that is what you're striving toward, right? So I think the biggest thing is that, and I'm sure franchise attorneys around the world are going to appreciate this, is that it's more than just what you're putting together in March. You need to be working on that all the way through, so you're not up against the wall, right? And guessing, or then saying, well, no, you can't put it in because your numbers weren't good enough. You better know if your numbers aren't good enough way before March.
Yeah, and the planning. Because Lisa, we're going to send this video to our clients as we say, "Hey, it's Q3.
I'm
Let's
going to
start
get
planning."
hate mail.
No. This is great. So if we put everything together, and I love the point about, hey, this is not just about item 19. This is also about your coaching framework and KPIs you're tracking with your franchisees. Any other best practices, or hey, franchisors, know this and live this, or here's an additional insight that you should know, how us brokers are looking at these and handling them, and what doesn't work at all and what's working? Any
That's
last
a lot,
point?
Charles.
Yes.
One question. You get one question. So I think the biggest thing that we've run into lately is, as the item 19s are getting more transparent, which is great, it's important that the franchisees in validation know their numbers, because they're being referenced and percentages are being referenced. And I think that somewhere along the way, occasionally there's a disconnect. And so I've had franchisees on calls and saying, well, no, that's not my numbers. That's nowhere close. And then I've got franchise candidates saying they are lying. I'm like, no, I think it might be that the franchise owner just didn't really understand the question, didn't know their numbers. So I think, and that's, I think, why I was pushing, make it a franchisee centric type of project, into we're all going to get a more detailed P&L and a more detailed balance sheet to help you become better franchisees, better business owners. But that's also going to help franchisors bring it full circle into validation, because now you have business owners, successful business owners, who are validating to these candidates. The level, I think that's what I've seen a lot this year for sure. The level of franchise candidate questions is it's very business oriented, at least for the people that I've been working with. So they are asking, based on what they're seeing in the item 19, they're referencing that. It's validation. You're validating what you think you heard to what's actually happening. And so I think it's important that we take it all the way through the process, and that those franchisees also know their numbers and they know what's being said, because it does become a little bit of deer in the headlights if they don't know their numbers and that's what's being reported. So
Yeah, Lisa, that's it shouldn't amaze me. That's amazing advice.
And it's scary, and it puts us into a weird position, because now we're calling franchisors and saying, I know what this item 19 means. You know what this item 19 means. But we just talked to Jim, and Jim says that it's not right. So, and he just said that on a validation call that. So,
right. And there's probably a ton of reasons for that. One of which is, hey, there's a methodology that is not so clear. I mean, we even had, I have questions with clients of, hey, how come if vertically all the numbers from gross sales to average cost of goods sold, average this, that, all total for like a gross profit, but the median number doesn't total, right? And it
Right.
just has to do with averages and medians. But the really big point here ties in again with your best practices, which is you really need the data first and foremost for your franchisees to succeed. But then the great point, Lisa, is you need to be sharing the data with your franchisees, right? That is so fundamental. And I could promise you that was not on my radar today at all. I'm going to be giving like clients this great advice. I will give you credit though. But,
Hey, make sure. Well, and I think sometimes it's easy enough to explain. I mean, I've owned a business, right? So I get it. It's like, okay, but just remember that their income, they're not counting their cell phone bill and the gas in their car and the things that they're running through their business. But technically, that's coming out of what their owner discretionary profit is, right? So depending on how they're running that business and what it looks like. So they're saying, oh no, I didn't make $400,000 last year. I made 200, but they're not
right.
saying, but I made my boat payment or whatever that is. So, I mean, it's just a matter of before you get on those, especially a lot of recorded validation calls are a new thing. We can have that be a whole nother topic, but if those are being recorded and they're going to be put into perpetuity, make sure your franchisees know their numbers and the percentages and what their business looks like on paper.
That's great advice, Lisa. So after this conversation, item 19 becomes something completely different for franchisors, right? It's needed, but it's such a critical business planning tool. And I think that's such a holistic viewpoint you shared. I am for sure. I mean, we focus Q3 is our item 19 season.
Right.
Yeah, Lisa, I can't thank you for these insights. Amazing. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you. And franchisors, don't send Lisa hate mail. She's
Send it to me.
send it to Charles.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.